Hey, welcome to our channel. Make sure to subscribe and turn on the bell so you never miss our latest content.
There's a specific quality to the evening light in Meadow Creek. It filters through the dense leaves of the old maple trees that line our street, dappling the manicured lawns in shifting patterns of gold and green. It's a quiet light, a peaceful light. For years, I believed it was the light of my life, a perfect reflection of the world I had built. Our house, a modest but meticulously kept craftsman, stood as a testament to that belief. I'm Brennan, an architect specializing in sustainable design, and I'd poured every principle I held dear into its bones. Solar panels gleamed discreetly on the roof, the garden thrived with native plants, and the wide front porch was where my family's life was lived. My family. They were the sun around which my world orbited. Adeline, my wife, was a force of nature, an interior designer with her own successful business. She moved through the world with a grace and confidence that had captivated me from the moment we met. She could command a room of contractors with a flick of her wrist and then, an hour later, be on the floor with our daughter, her laughter echoing through the house. To everyone in Meadow Creek, we were the ideal, the stable, successful couple with the perfect child. And then there was Clara, our 6-year-old daughter. She was the best of both of us, a whirlwind of bright curiosity and deep affection. Her hair was a cascade of Adeline's dark curls, but her eyes were mine, a deep, thoughtful blue. She was the light of our home, the vibrant color in our carefully composed picture. Our routines were her bedrock. Weekday mornings were a flurry of breakfast and school prep, evenings were homework and stories, and weekends were for small adventures, a trip to the farmer's market, a bike ride along the creek path. Friday nights were sacred. It was our movie night. We'd pile onto the large sectional sofa Adeline had chosen, a fortress of pillows and blankets around us. Clara would be nestled between us, her small head resting on my chest, her feet tucked under Adeline's arm, her breathing a soft, steady rhythm against the movie's score. In those moments, holding my daughter, with my wife beside me, the world felt unshakably secure. I had everything a man could ever want. I was fulfilled. But sometimes, in the quiet moments after Clara was asleep, I would see something flicker across Adeline's face. It was a shadow, a fleeting expression I couldn't quite name. I'd find her staring out the kitchen window, her hand paused mid-air while washing dishes, a look of profound distance in her eyes. "Everything okay, Addie?" I'd ask, wrapping my arms around her from behind. She would startle, the shadow vanishing as quickly as it appeared, replaced by her familiar, brilliant smile. "Of course, Bren, just tired, thinking about the Henderson project. The client is impossible." I accepted it because I wanted to, because the alternative was unthinkable. The idea that this perfect picture we had painted could have cracks in its foundation was a notion my mind refused to entertain. I saw her success, her beauty, her role as a mother, and I assumed it brought her the same deep, quiet contentment it brought me. I mistook the performance of happiness for the real thing. I see that now. Back then, I just saw my Adeline, the architect of our beautiful life, and I believed in her design completely. The change began not with a bang, but with a whisper, a child's whisper, in the golden afternoon light of our living room. It was a Saturday. I was on the floor, helping Clara build a sprawling Lego castle, its mismatched towers reaching for the ceiling. Adeline was out, a last-minute meeting with a new client, she'd said. Clara, having grown bored with the structural integrity of our castle, had moved on to her dolls. She had a whole family of them laid out on the Persian rug. There was the dad doll, who looked a bit like me if I were made of plastic and perpetually smiling. There was the mom doll, with long, dark hair like Adeline. And there was Clara's doll, a smaller figure with a bright yellow dress. I was only half listening, my mind drifting to blueprints and load-bearing walls, when I heard the words that would become the first tremor in the earthquake that would shatter my world. Clara was holding the mom doll and another male doll, one I didn't recognize. He was dressed in sporty clothes. "Okay, now you kiss," Clara said in a high, theatrical voice, pressing the dolls' plastic faces together. "Mommy loves Teacher Garrett." The Lego brick in my hand stopped halfway to its destination. My blood went cold. Garrett. Garrett was her soccer coach. A pleasant enough young man I'd exchanged a few words with at her practices. Teacher Garrett. I tried to keep my voice light, casual. A parent feigning interest in a child's game. "Who's that, sweetie?" I asked, pointing to the male doll. "It's Teacher Garrett," she said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. She made the mom doll and the Garrett doll hug. "They have a secret." My heart started a low, heavy drumbeat against my ribs. A secret? It had to be nothing. Kids pick up phrases. They mix up storylines from cartoons. They create fantasies from the fragments of the adult world they overhear. It was just a game. "What kind of secret?" I pushed, my voice tighter than I wanted. Clara shrugged, her attention already wandering. "A grown-up secret," she said, and then promptly had the dad doll trip over a Lego and fall flat on his face. She giggled, The game moved on, the dolls were forgotten. But for me, the world had tilted ever so slightly on its axis. Mommy loves Teacher Garrett. The words echoed in the sudden silence of my mind. It was absurd. It was a child's nonsensical chatter. Adeline barely knew the man. She dropped Clara off, sometimes stayed to watch for a few minutes, but she was always on her phone, dealing with work. I spent the rest of the afternoon trying to reason with myself, trying to bury the ugly seed her innocent words had planted. But it was no use. The seed was there, lodged deep in my gut, and I could feel it beginning to sprout. When Adeline came home that evening, smelling faintly of a perfume I didn't recognize and full of apologies for the meeting running late, I looked at her, and for the first time in our marriage, when she smiled at me, I didn't see my wife. I saw a stranger, and I wondered what secrets she was keeping. In the days that followed, it was as if a filter had been removed from my eyes. I started seeing things I had previously ignored, connecting dots I hadn't known existed. The world of blissful ignorance I had inhabited was gone, replaced by a landscape sharp with detail and shadowed with doubt. Adeline's late meetings became more frequent. She'd text me around 5, her messages filled with a new kind of breezy apology. "Hey, the flooring supplier just showed up unannounced. Going to be another hour or so. Kiss Clara for me, Zoe." Before, I would have just felt a pang of sympathy for her long day. Now, every excuse felt hollow, every XO a tiny act of misdirection. Her phone, once a casual object left on the kitchen counter, was now her constant companion. It lay face down beside her plate at dinner. It went with her into the bathroom when she showered. One evening, as she was scrolling through something, I came up behind her to hug her, and she flinched, instinctively angling the screen away from me. The motion was small, almost imperceptible, but it felt like a slap. "Just a demanding client," she'd said, forcing a laugh. "You know how at Island." I did know how it was. And this wasn't it. The distance between us grew, a silent, chilling chasm. Our conversations became purely functional, revolving around Clara's schedule and household logistics. The easy intimacy we once shared, the unspoken understanding, had evaporated. When I tried to reach for her in bed, she would feign sleep or murmur about being exhausted. I was sleeping next to a ghost. The final, damning piece of evidence came on a Tuesday night. Adeline was upstairs giving Clara a bath. Her phone, left for once on the arm of the sofa, buzzed. I didn't mean to look. I swear to myself, even now, that I didn't. But my eyes were drawn to it as if by a magnetic force. The screen was lit up. A message preview on the lock screen. "Garrett, still thinking about yesterday. Can't wait to see you again." The air rushed out of my lungs. My vision swam. It was real. It wasn't a child's fantasy. It wasn't my paranoia. It was real. The name on the screen was a brand, searing the truth into my mind. Garrett. Teacher Garrett. I felt a wave of nausea so profound I had to grip the back of the chair to steady myself. Upstairs, I could hear the sounds of my life, the life I thought I had continuing as normal. The splashing of water, Adeline's gentle voice singing a nursery rhyme, Clara's happy squeals. It was a soundtrack to a life that was now a lie. Every late night, every vague excuse, every distant look, it all clicked into place, forming a hideous, undeniable mosaic of betrayal. I stood there in the silent living room, the happy sounds from upstairs mocking me, and I felt the floor of my world crumble away, leaving me in a free fall. The question was no longer if my wife was having an affair. The only question left was what I was going to do about it. The doubt was gone, replaced by a cold, hard certainty that felt like a block of ice in my chest. Obsession is a quiet, creeping thing. It took root in the wreckage of my certainty and grew with a terrifying speed. For 2 days, I went through the motions, a hollowed-out automaton. I made breakfast. I drove Clara to school. I sat in my office, staring at blueprints that made no sense. But all the while, a plan was forming, a dark and necessary course of action. I had to see it. I had to know. On Thursday afternoon, I left work early, my heart a frantic, caged bird against my ribs. I told my assistant I had a family emergency, a lie that felt sickeningly close to the truth. I drove to Clara's school and parked across the street, my car blending in with the other waiting parents. But I wasn't there for my daughter. Soccer practice ended at 4. I watched as Garrett, a man whose face I now saw in my nightmares, gathered the kids for a final cheer. He was handsome in a generic, athletic way, and he had an easy rapport with the children. With my child, the thought made me physically ill. When the parents had collected their kids, Garrett packed up his cones and got into a modest sedan. I started my engine, my hands slick with sweat on the steering wheel, and I followed him. He didn't drive home. He drove to the other side of town, to a place I would never have expected, the Oakwood Hotel. It wasn't a seedy motel. It was a respectable, unremarkable business hotel, a place for conferences and traveling salespeople. A place of total anonymity. He parked and went inside. I parked a few rows away, my mind screaming. This could be anything. A meeting. A friend. But I knew with a soul-deep certainty what was about to happen, and I was right. 10 minutes later, Adeline's SUV pulled into the lot. My wife. She got out of the car, looking left and right before walking towards the entrance, a picture of casual purpose. She was wearing a trench coat I'd bought her for her birthday. Watching her walk into that hotel to meet another man felt like watching a stranger desecrate a holy place. I sat there for a moment, paralyzed by a pain so white-hot it stole my breath. This was it, the point of no return. I could drive away, pretend I hadn't seen, and live the rest of my life with this poison eating me from the inside out. Or I could face it. Anger, cold and pure, surged through me, overriding the pain. It propelled me out of the car and across the parking lot. I walked into the sterile, quiet lobby, and there they were, standing near the elevators. He had his hand on the small of her back, and she was laughing, her head tilted back in a way that used to be reserved for me. They looked happy, carefree. The sight broke something inside me. All the love, all the trust, all the shared history of our lives, it all curdled into a feeling of profound disgust. I walked towards them. Neither of them saw me until I was only a few feet away. Adeline's eyes widened first, the laughter dying on her lips, her face draining of all color. Garrett looked from her to me, confusion turning to dawning horror. The world seemed to shrink to just the three of us in that soulless lobby. "Brennan," Adeline whispered, her voice a thread of sound. I ignored her. My eyes were locked on him. "Get your hand off my wife." He snatched his hand back as if he'd been burned. I turned my gaze to Adeline. There were no tears, no shouting, just a voice I didn't recognize as my own, flat and dead. "What are you doing here, Adeline?" I didn't need the answer. I just needed to hear her say it, to make it real. "Brennan, we were just, it's not what you think," she stammered, the pathetic, cliché words hanging in the air between us. "It's not what I think?" I let out a short, sharp laugh devoid of any humor. "You are standing in a hotel lobby with our daughter's soccer coach, about to go up to a room. Tell me, Adeline, what exactly am I supposed to think?" She opened her mouth, but no words came out. There were none left. The truth was there, ugly and undeniable, reflected in her terrified eyes. "It's over," I said, the words feeling like stones in my mouth. "When I get home, I want you gone. Pack a bag. Go to your parents. I don't care. Just be gone." I looked at Garrett, who was trying to shrink into the wallpaper. "And you," I said, my voice dropping to a low, dangerous register. "You're done. I will personally see to it that the school board, every parent on that team, and everyone in this town knows exactly what kind of man they entrusted their children to." I didn't wait for a response. I turned my back on them, on the smoldering ruins of my marriage, and walked out of the hotel. The cool evening air hit my face, but I couldn't feel it. I felt nothing at all. I got in my car, drove home to the empty house that was no longer a home, and I finally let myself break. The silence in the house was the first thing that hit me. It wasn't just quiet. It was a heavy, suffocating void where life used to be. The ghosts of laughter and conversation haunted every room. Adeline had complied. When I got home from the hotel, a hastily packed suitcase was gone from our closet, and a note was on the kitchen counter. It was just 2 words. "I'm sorry." I crumpled it up and threw it in the trash. Sorry wasn't a word anymore. It was just a sound. She had taken Clara to her parents' house across town. The first few days were a blur of logistics and raw, throbbing pain. We communicated through terse text messages. I arranged to pick Clara up for the weekend. I thought, naively, that we could shield her from the worst of it. I was wrong. When I picked her up that first Friday, she ran to me, burying her face in my legs and holding on with a desperate strength. But she wasn't the same child. The bright light in her eyes had dimmed, replaced by a confused, anxious watchfulness. "Is Mommy coming home with us?" she asked, her small voice trembling as we drove back to our now hollow house. "Not right now, sweetie," I said, my own voice thick with unshed tears. "Mommy needs to stay with Grandma and Grandpa for a little while." "Because of me?" she whispered from the back seat. Was I bad? That question was a physical blow. It knocked the wind out of me. I pulled the car over, my body shaking. I turned around and unbuckled her from her car seat, pulling her into my lap in the front. "No, Clara." "Oh, baby, no," I sobbed, holding her tight against my chest. "This is not your fault. Never, ever think that. This is about grown-up things. Mommy and Daddy both love you more than anything in the world. Nothing you could ever do would change that." But the damage was done. My daughter, my bright, confident girl, now believed she was the cause of her world falling apart. The weekend was agonizing. She was clingy, refusing to let me out of her sight, but she was also unnervingly quiet. The toys in her room sat untouched. When I suggested we watch a movie, she just shook her head and curled up next to me on the sofa. silent. The joy had been siphoned out of our home, out of our lives. The worst part was her reaction to Adeline. When I would try to get her on a video call with her mother, Clara would stiffen. She'd give one-word answers, her eyes fixed on the floor. When Adeline's voice would crack with emotion, trying to coax a real conversation out of her, Clara would simply say, "I want to go now," and walk away, leaving me to face Adeline's heartbroken, pixelated face on the screen. Adeline was drowning in her own guilt, and she saw Clara's rejection as a daily, brutal punishment. She didn't understand that Clara wasn't trying to punish her. She was just a 6-year-old girl in immense pain, and her primary coping mechanism was to withdraw from the source of that pain. I tried to bridge the gap. I encouraged Clara to talk about her feelings. I relayed messages of love from Adeline. I tried to maintain a sense of normalcy. But it was like trying to build a sandcastle against a rising tide. The foundation of her world, the unwavering presence of her two parents under one roof was gone, and she was lost in the wreckage. Seeing the light fade from my daughter's eyes was a pain far greater than Adeline's betrayal. That had broken my heart. This was breaking my soul. The breaking point came 3 weeks into our new, fractured reality. I had been clinging to our shared custody agreement, to the belief that Adeline, despite her catastrophic personal failure, still had Clara's best interests at heart. That belief was about to be obliterated. It was a Sunday evening, the time I was supposed to drop Clara back at her grandparents' house. She had been crying on and off all afternoon, a low, miserable whimper. "I don't want to go, Daddy. Please, can I stay with you?" she'd pleaded, her little hands clutching the fabric of my shirt. Every word was a knife in my gut. I was trying to explain to her, for the 100th time, that she would see me again in just a few days, when my phone buzzed. It was a text from Adeline. "Brennan, this isn't working. She's a wreck every time she has to leave you. She needs stability. She needs to reconnect with me without the disruption. I'm suspending your visits for a while. I think it's what's best for her right now. I'll be in touch when she's more settled." I read the message once, then a second time. A cold, white-hot fury unlike anything I had ever experienced washed over me. This wasn't protection. This was a power play. This was punishment. She was using our daughter, our broken, hurting daughter, as a shield for her own guilt and a weapon against me. "What is it, Daddy?" Clara asked, seeing the look on my face. I knelt down and looked her in the eyes, forcing my voice to be calm. "Everything is going to be okay, sweetie. You're staying here with me tonight." The relief that flooded her face was all the confirmation I needed. I called Adeline. She didn't pick up. I called her parents. Her mother answered, her voice strained. "Adeline feels this is for the best, Brennan." "For the best?" I exploded, my voice cracking. "You're letting her emotionally blackmail her own child? You're complicit in hurting my daughter just to soothe Adeline's ego? This is not happening." I hung up, and the next morning, I was in a lawyer's office. I didn't want a war. God, I wanted anything but that. But she had crossed a line. She had prioritized her own selfish needs over the well-being of our child. She had left me no other choice. My lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Miss Davies, listened to the whole sordid story. I gave her everything. The timeline, the text between Adeline and Garrett that I had found on our shared cloud account, and most importantly, Adeline's message cutting me off from my daughter. "This message," Miss Davies said, tapping her pen on the printout, "is parental alienation. A court will not look kindly on this. We file for primary custody, immediately." The legal process was a brutal, soul-crushing ordeal. It involved depositions, psychological evaluations for Clara, and the airing of our family's dirtiest laundry in sterile legal documents. Adeline's defense was that she was a desperate mother trying to protect a fragile child. She painted me as an angry, vengeful husband who couldn't see past his own hurt. In the courtroom, seeing her on the stand was surreal. This was the woman I had built a life with, now reduced to a trembling witness trying to justify the unjustifiable. "I was just trying to give her a safe space," Adeline cried, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. "She was so confused. I'm her mother. I just wanted her to feel safe with me again." But the evidence was overwhelming. The therapist's report clearly stated that Clara's emotional distress was exacerbated by the separation from her primary attachment figure, me, and that blocking access was causing demonstrable harm. The judge, a stern-looking woman with kind eyes, delivered her ruling with clarity and precision. "A child's right to a healthy relationship with both parents is paramount," she stated, looking directly at Adeline. "When one parent actively works to undermine that bond, especially during a time of crisis, the court must intervene. Parental love is not a tool of control." She didn't grant me sole custody, but she did the next best thing. I was awarded primary physical custody. Adeline was granted regular, supervised visits, contingent upon her attending family counseling. Walking out of that courtroom, I didn't feel victorious. I just felt an immense, bone-deep relief. The war was over. I could finally take my daughter home and begin the long, slow process of putting the pieces of her childhood back together. I had my daughter back. That was the only victory that mattered. In the aftermath, life found a new rhythm. It was a quieter rhythm, a more deliberate one. Our house, once a home for 3, became a sanctuary for 2. The silence was no longer a suffocating void. It was a space we learned to fill with our own quiet companionship. We brought back Friday movie nights, but now it was just the 2 of us, and I had to be strong enough for both of us when Clara would inevitably ask, "Does mommy watch movies on Fridays, too?"